Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show. Today is Tuesday, June 9th, 2015. We're still on the YouTube platform, and we still have Andrew Malcolm here, as we do every Tuesday, because that's just the awesome part of this. Andrew Malcolm, of course, from Investors Business Daily, investors.com, and the Prince of Twitter, at
I've seen people on Twitter now, they start using that phrase. Malcolm, the Prince of Twitter.
I'm a trendsetter. I'm a trendsetter. I don't even know why I started that up. I think it was because I saw you had so many followers.
But I'll take it. It's the only way I'm going to make royalty.
Yeah. Well, you are American royalty. That's what you are.
Yeah.
You are American royalty, Andrew. There's no doubt about that.
That's me.
Now, for those of you who are confused as to why we're on the YouTube channel today rather than Ustream, like I said last week, there's a reason for that. The reason is that I tried to switch over to Ustream today, and they wanted me to upgrade the producer software, and then wanted to charge me full price rather than the upgrade price to do so. And so I have to do a little bit more work on getting that transition done. So we're back to YouTube for the time being. And I actually like the YouTube. It's just I think that we get more audience when we're over on Ustream, being part of their network. But because I like the Ustream folks, but I didn't realize that this was going to be. This is my life, Andrew. I sent Andrew a message earlier today saying that I was particularly unmotivated today. So I didn't do hardly any preparation. So Andrew's used to this, right? We just kind of come. It's like with Dwayne and I. We just get on the air and we figure out what we're going to talk about. I didn't log into Ustream. I didn't try to log into Ustream until about, 25 minutes ago, and realized what the issue was going to be. And, I tried to fix it right up until about 5 minutes to the hour. And I finally said, I got to call Andrew. This is getting out of hand. So, yeah.
Well, I think most of your listeners are getting used to your abuse.
Yeah, sadly, that is true. I am the most abusive talk show host and internet streaming.
It's kind of disturbing. If it was in the morning, I think there might be street riots. But people have kind of mellowed out and started to drink in the East by now, so they're okay with it.
There you go. So that's perfect. It's perfect. At any rate, Andrew is, of course, with us today, and a little later on, we'll have Raffi Williams from the RNC joining us to talk about what's going on with President Obama's speech about Obamacare today. That's something that you wrote about, Andrew. President Obama's speech about Obamacare, and you wrote about the continuing wave of popularity for his signature program.
It's amazing. He had his news conference yesterday in Germany, and I'm now, besides my column, I'm now also writing some editorials for IBD. And so the editor asked me if I would write one about this delusional president. I mean, the examples are just mounting of his delusion. The fight against ISIS is a success. The Yemen operations are a success. He said that Obamacare was a huge success. None of the predictions of bad things had come to pass, which was interesting, and that he let's see, what else was it? Oh, I see. I'm on the wrong page. Well, it's just amazing how if he says it, it's true. You remember, there's not a scintilla of corruption in the IRS.
Yes. Not a. Was it a smidgen or a scintilla?
Smidgen. No, it was smidgen.
It was a smidgen.
Those S words throw me, and there wasn't a smidgen of that, and it's so disturbing, because you like to think that a president is on top of things, and I guess they didn't have anything about the Obamacare problems on ESPN because he doesn't he doesn't have a clue, and Well, here. Well, okay. I'm sorry.
No, no, it's okay. So yeah,
But I was trying to call up the list of them. Um,
so obviously this is a man who's well in touch with the situation on the ground in his
well, he's
his
well in
presidency.
touch of what he wants it to be,
Yeah.
and if he says it, it must be true. It's so imperial, and for a while I used to think, well, it's just a rookie mistake, but no,
No,
not
no,
no.
he's far from a rookie. I mean, he really is. This is 6 years in, and he's still, yeah, he's not a rookie. There's no rookie. Can't give him the rookie giveaway at this point in time. But he doesn't. Here's the thing that I found interesting. I got this from the comment section, which is always a it's always a dodgy proposition when you do that. But there were people who were a little unhappy that we hadn't mentioned Obama's attempt to bully the Supreme Court with these speeches. There was yesterday,
yeah,
there was today,
yeah.
and I'm thinking to myself, look, I mean, I think the and you and I have talked about this a number of times. The remarks during the State of the Union address were really cheap shots.
Oh,
They were
downright rude.
very
Yeah.
rude. They were basically captive audience. They didn't have an opportunity to respond. Just the fact that Alito responded at all, people were jumping all over Samuel Alito on this. But honestly, I mean, otherwise, look, he can get up in front of a podium and say whatever he wants to say. The truth is that the executive branch has absolutely zero power over justices who are already on the court. Now, they can appoint other justices, at which point they have zero power over them again. The only one that really actually has power over the justices is Congress, because they could impeach a Supreme Court justice. It's never been done, but they could if they needed to. So as far as I'm concerned, Obama can flap his gums all he wants. I don't think the justices are thinking, "Oh my gosh, Obama's talking bad about us. We better give him what he wants." I don't see that as a dynamic, especially for a lame duck president, just about ready to enter year 7 of his lame duckedness.
Plus the fact that the arguments, everything with Obama is political.
Or he's in year 7. Yeah.
But the arguments. They've already decided. In fact, my understanding of the Supreme Court operations, they took their vote right after the oral arguments. And
Yeah,
then
probably
they assign
months
the
ago.
opinions and they pass them around. And I guess John Roberts changed his vote last time, but it's so it's not like it's going to change them. Although I guess by appearances, you could say that it looked like Roberts caved a little bit because he didn't want the Supreme Court to become political. Ha ha ha!
Yeah, right. Good luck there.
With this kind of president. So it's just rude. Remember, he also was disturbed. These stupid federal court judges who get in his way of the excuse me, illegal executive orders on immigration. Whenever anybody opposes Obama, it can't be an honest disagreement, and so he impugns their integrity, their motives.
Right.
And as my father would have said, well, if it occurred to him, maybe that's what he's doing. It's cheap, and so much of what Obama says, for instance, the ISIS came out. We still don't have a strategy. One, he doesn't want to have a strategy. Two,
Right.
He's trying to kick the can down the road for the next 590 days. But in explaining how 10 months after he said he had a strategy that we don't have a strategy, he blames the Pentagon for not giving him plans, which is a lie. The Pentagon gives you plans for everything.
Right. They have a plan to invade Canada. I mean,
They have plans for everything. Every island in the Pacific, they got plans.
Right.
And so he's got them. He may not have decided, but So he wants the Pentagon to take the fall, right?
Right.
It's like a high school football coach, when they talk to him about losing the big game. Oh, those darn team players, those players, they just called the wrong plays and they did what I said. It's their fault. And Obama is what I said in one of my things that I wrote was that Obama is blaming Iraq for not being trained fast enough. Well, I thought we were doing the training. It's an example, not to get into too much psychotherapy here, but
Right.
it's an example of what I suppose it's the same with women. I don't know, but it's an example of the way boys behave when they don't have a father who makes them who teaches them to take responsibility for what they do. It's a big deal in my childhood and everybody else I've talked with. That you make a mistake, you can get in more trouble for not fessing up than for the original mistake.
Right.
At least in my upbringing, and Obama, there was nobody there to call him on it, so it's always somebody else's fault. He doesn't know how to apologize either. So it's and I think a lot of people are catching on to it. Of course, his numbers are underwater, but now Obamacare's numbers are getting worse. Only 39% think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean this is the point in time where you would have expected those numbers to be going up if the program was working.
And remember, well, it's understandable if the numbers aren't good, because once the people read it, they'll come to like it.
Yeah, once they find out what's in it, right? I mean, wasn't that the deal?
Right.
Once you find out what's in it, it's great. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not working out, huh?
No, it's not working out. Now, if you ask them about the program as a whole, they don't like it. They especially don't like the individual mandate.
Right.
But when you start talking about taking away subsidies, oh, wow. Which, of course, Obama knew. New entitlements are something that have a way of taking root very quickly, like dandelions in the lawn.
Yep. Yeah, which is one of the reasons why some of us were arguing that you really needed to get behind somebody else other than Barack Obama. You actually had to turn out in 2012 and vote for the Republican nominee, even if you weren't terribly excited about it, because it was the best and maybe the only opportunity to really pull out Obamacare before it took root. And here we are.
Yeah, and remember in March of 2012, he didn't know we were listening at the time, but he told then President Medvedev of Russia that this was his final election. It's like release from prison, and he would have a lot more flexibility after the win. Now he was talking about on giving in on missile defense and cutting the military, which of course he's doing, but also he doesn't have the reign of having to go to the people anymore. He threw the House under the bus over Obamacare in 2010. He lost the Senate, but what does he care? His goal is just to keep everybody fighting. It's what Chicago mayors do. Keep everybody fighting, and it's harder for them to come after you.
Right. Divide and conquer.
It's a shame because sadly what's happening to the country, and I don't know if it's repairable if Republicans get in. Historically, Republicans should get in because Americans don't like the same party running the White House for 3 terms in a row, except for George H.W. Bush, which was kind of a third Reagan term. The arrogance that comes with it, and the desire on Obama's part, he doesn't really care about the country. The desire is to corrode the institutions for momentary political gain. So Congress, a lot of Americans don't ever like Congress, but he's fed that because all of their motives are bad and evil about the House and the Senate. He's impugning ever since Citizens United, the Supreme Court, and anybody else who disagrees with him. He said in his Catholic healthcare speech today, I haven't gotten a chance to finish reading it, but he really loves nuns and what they do for the people, unless they're sisters of the poor.
Unless they're sisters of the poor, right?
Because they oppose him. It's whatever works. We're beating ISIS. Well, actually, no, we're not.
No, we're not. In fact, we're losing badly.
We're losing badly.
See where they took over, at least they claim to have taken over the Libyan port of Sirte?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just right across, it's just right across that little patch of water there to a place called, Italy, Sicily, the West. Now, I don't know. That's what they're claiming. And so you never know that whether or not that's correct or not. But the fact that ISIS is, there was another story too where it's either 86 or 88. The count changes depending on which media outlet's reporting this. But dozens of Christians were captured by ISIS because they're controlling the roads going towards Tripoli, which is where these people were trying to get to so they could flee the country. And they let the Muslims go that were part of that caravan, but kept the Christians, including 15 women and children. Most of them were men, though. A few of them escaped, which is the reason why we know about it, but nobody knows what's happened to these people. It won't be anything good. But ISIS has affiliates in Libya that are loyal to the so-called caliphate, and they are consolidating their power in Libya as well, thanks to the failed state that we left behind,
that we created. Right. And this is when they asked on that video, that wonderful video, when they asked the Iowa Democrats, well, what was Hillary Clinton's signature achievement? They couldn't come up with any. But if you did come up with one, it would be the Libyan War. They ousted Gaddafi, which, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
And here's the follow-on of that, if you think it through. Okay, Gaddafi threatened to kill some civilians when he was fighting the rebels in Benghazi. He threatened to kill some civilians, and that was the alleged motivation that actually Susan Rice and Hillary Clinton were the big promoters of this invasion, that Obama went along with the Europeans, who of course have a greater interest in Libya. So we go in, and at the cost of one $35 million plane and hundreds of Tomahawk missiles, we arrange for Gaddafi to be torn apart by a mob. Now, you back up. Muammar Gaddafi was the fellow who, under Western pressure, literally gave up his nuclear weapons program, which he had in place. He gave up his nuclear weapons program. Now, the good side of that is that it gave the Americans and the Israelis so they could reverse engineer the program and design and then plant, because it's the same type program as Iran's. And so Americans and Israelis could reverse engineer and design that Stuxnet virus that they planted that didn't set off the alarms and screwed up the Iranians for a while. Now, the downside to that is if you're Iran and the U.S. says, come on, give up your weapons program, no. Not only do they want it, but giving it up like Gaddafi did doesn't really pay off. And look at Ukraine, which gave up its nuclear materials with the guarantee of its territorial sovereignty being protected by Russia and the West, and that didn't work out either. So,
no, it didn't.
So if you're an operator in the Middle East, and Obama says, for instance, if you're the Sunni tribes and you say, and Obama says, come on, we got to fight these ISIS guys, You go, yeah, you know what? I believe George W. Bush because he brought in a surge of troops, but you pulled all of them out, and now you want us to do the fighting, and that's his problem.
Yeah.
That was part of his blame of the Iraqis is that they didn't get trained fast enough.
Well, that's
So it's a
darn those
mess.
Iraqis.
It's a mess. It's an incredible mess that we'll be fighting over for years, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, that's true.
Until we get somebody that the world believes our leadership.
All right, so let's focus on that because there's a great story about this, and you and I actually started talking about this on Friday because you were kind enough to join me on the Hugh Hewitt show, and we had a couple.
Yeah,
of
that was
segments
fun.
here.
I love that. Boy, does that get the attention. I heard from more of my creditors I was trying to dodge.
I was just about to say that. Now they know where to find you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to help, Andrew. But we were talking about the New York Times and their big scoop, their big huge scoop about Marco Rubio's traffic tickets. Well, they had another big huge scoop today, Andrew.
Yeah.
Marco Rubio got paid $800,000 for a book advance, which granted is not Clinton money. It's not $14 million. It's not $8 million like the Clintons got for a couple of their book advances. But $800,000 is a pretty nice chunk of change for somebody who is of middle-class means, which Rubio has been. And he decided to spend $80,000 of that, or about a tenth of his advance, before taxes and before whatever agency fees he pays, to buy what the New York Times described as a luxury speedboat. A luxury speedboat, Andrew. Yeah. A luxury speedboat. You know what a luxury speedboat is? A 24-foot boat with 2 outboard motors. The campaign, or I don't think you can call it a campaign. I'm not sure if he's officially announced yet. Team Rubio, let's just put it that way. Team Rubio.
No, Rubio's announced.
Yeah. He's officially announced. So the Rubio campaign sent over a link to the model of the boat that Rubio bought with this $80,000, and then later they sent that to Dylan Byers of Politico. By the way, usually that goes the other way around. It's New York Times running to Dylan Byers, who, to his credit, actually wrote an entire piece about the New York Times dodging the Washington Free Beacon by sending him the comment. So kudos to Dylan. I mean, I know some of the commenters. And he
did about when ABC.
Yes, he did.
Dodged the Free Beacon too.
Yes, he did. So I mean, he's actually flagging this, that the New York Times is doing this. So this time it went the other direction. The Rubio campaign went to Dylan Byers to send him the link, and then Blake Hounshell, who's also of Politico, actually got a picture of the boat that Rubio bought. And needless to say, this is not a luxury speedboat. It's a fishing boat. It's a nice fishing boat. He paid retail for it, which there's a few people on Twitter going, $80,000 out. No, he probably could have gotten that for $65,000. Okay, whatever. The guy doesn't make a good deal on boats. He went out and paid retail. But this is not a luxury speedboat. This is not evidence of somebody who has a, and I quote from the New York Times, a penchant for luxury. A penchant for luxury.
Imagine what the New York Times will do when they find out that John Kerry has a 47-foot yacht that he moors in Rhode Island to avoid Massachusetts property tax.
The deuce you say, Andrew. The deuce you say. I have never heard of such a thing. Not from the New York Times, anyway. I've heard it from other places, but I've never heard it from the New York Times.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is. I don't know why the New York Times has all of a sudden taken this much interest in vetting Marco Rubio.
Oh, because they're scared to death.
Right.
They see him coming, and he is, and I think I said this on the show months ago. I think Marco Rubio is the best Republican communicator since Reagan. He's really, really good, and he's cheerful. He's optimistic. They haven't got any major dirt on him, and they're trying, obviously. Imagine having a fishing boat, killing those reptiles. I don't know.
Well, that's another story. I don't know if you saw Joyce Carol Oates' tweet today.
No.
You know who Joyce Carol Oates is, right? The poet.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
The novelist, the poet. Somebody tweeted out a picture of of Steven Spielberg from Jurassic Park, and he took a picture in front of the model of one of the dinosaurs that was kind of. You remember the sick dinosaur in the original Jurassic Park, the one that they're trying to treat?
Yeah.
I forget. Laura Dern and Sam Neill. They're trying to treat this ailing. I think it's a Triceratops. Well, there's a publicity picture of Spielberg posing in front of this thing, and somebody tweeted out that that this is it's terrible that they're hunting extinct animals or endangered animals. And Joyce Carol Oates tweets out her outrage over the fact that aren't there any preservation efforts being made? And I read this and I tweeted it back out and said, I'd like to assume she's joking with this, but I'm not so sure.
That's probably an incorrect assumption.
Probably
one of the late night guys, we got the jokes for later, but one of the late night guys said that for the 40th anniversary of that movie Jaws, it's the real explanation isn't the 40th anniversary, that Steven Spielberg was sitting on his boat and he said, I need a larger boat. So they're going to re-release Jaws 40th or do another Jaws for the 40th anniversary. So he can get a larger boat. Maybe he should consult with Marco Rubio and John Kerry on where to get your boats.
I would be glad to pilot those boats for them as long as they allow me to sing "Farewell and Adieu to your fair Spanish ladies."
You know what they say about boats is that the happiest day of your life is when you get one, and the second happiest day is when you sell it.
Yeah, Jeff Dunn said that earlier too, because they're albatrosses. I mean,
yeah,
I've
really.
never known anybody who's had one for any length of time who either enjoyed it sitting in their. Some people are in them all the time. Okay, that's fine. Most people though, they haul them out of the water, it's sitting in their driveway for months at a stretch.
Yeah.
And they finally guilt themselves into taking it down to the water and taking it out for a spin, and then it's a few more months.
I have to say, when I published my first book back in the mid-'70s, I was so happy. I didn't get that much money. I was so happy that I went out and I bought a boat. I bought a sunfish. I don't know if you know anything about it, but
yeah, I did a little bit.
Sunfish is like a glorified surfboard. It's a sailboat, and the thing was about I don't know 8 or 9 feet long, and I lived on a lake, and I have to say it was a lot of fun. And what I would do is every time I left the dock in this 7-foot boat, I had an air horn and I would blow it like it was an ocean liner. And my neighbors were like, "Oh, Malcolm taking out his toy again." And
yeah, but it's fun. I mean, that's not a.
I also had a rowboat, and I painted the rowboat, and the draft numbers that they put on the bow, how much water it's drawing.
Right.
This is like a 10-foot wooden sailboat, and so I started with 24 feet on the front, and then on the back it was registered in Delaware. My little wooden rowboat. This is a true story. It's got nothing to do with politics or Rubio, but one time I had the distinct pleasure of going out in a nuclear submarine out of San Diego for a day. And if that wasn't exciting, I don't know what is. It was exciting to drive a race car at 150 miles an hour, but going out in a nuclear sub was a whole lot of fun. Wow. And so we're standing in the conning tower, or I am, and they tell you, no pictures because there's all kinds of secret stuff around. But they had a periscope, just like in the World War II movies,
Right.
And it came down, and the handles came down, and you turn it and look out. So the guy said, "Do you want to?" The watch commander said, "Do you want to look?" I said, "Oh, yes." So the periscope came down, and I looked through the holes, and he said, "What do you see?" And I said, "The Pacific." And he reached over and he turned one of the handles, one click, and he said, "What do you see now?" And I said, "Oh, there's a little boat on the horizon." And he turned it another click, and I said, "Oh, it's an oil tanker." And he turned it another click, and I said, and it's registered in Liberia. These guys can see over the horizon with the periscope. I mean, the magnification. I literally, I was reading the paint on the stern of the ship over 7 miles away.
That's pretty impressive. I mean, that really is
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah, really. And then we were over listening on the sonar, which I did not have on my Sunfish sailboat. Did not have sonar.
I thought it came with sonar.
No.
No?
That was an add-on, and I couldn't afford it at the time. And the guy is the guy with the earphones. He gives me a set of earphones, and he's pointing to the squiggles on the screen. He said, "See what that is?" And I said, "I see it, but I don't know what it is." He said, "Those are whales talking." It's amazing,
Yeah.
you know. It's really. But like I said, that has everything to do with Marco Rubio. So I think it's a sign of honor that for him that they're going after him. You know, he's been at or near the top. He's in everybody's top tier of Republican candidates, with probably Scott Walker, who won't be announcing until the end of the month. Jeb Bush is announcing next week.
Yep.
And so they'll be in the top 10 for the first Republican debate on Fox August 6th in the arena where the Republican convention will be 11 months later. And and then the other polls, which are interesting about Rubio, is that when, and we talked about this, I think, before, when you dig down into the numbers and you ask them, well, okay, you like Scott Walker, who else do you like, and so on, Marco Rubio comes up as the hands-down winner as second choice. So if your guy doesn't win, then everybody goes to Rubio, and I think that's going to be one of his strong suits.
Well,
even though he's young, I'll tell you what, the contrast, they have a Spanish-speaking 44-year-old.
43, 44. I mean, he's younger than me. He's by about a decade or so.
And he's got a boat. So
he's got a boat.
He's got a boat, and he's got a new refrigerator. So
$3,000 refrigerator. Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, because $3,000 buys you a lot of refrigerator.
Think about this. If you're the New York Times and you got $100,000 from the Clinton Foundation because they just want to be generous and pay you back for endorsing her in 2008 over Obama.
Yeah.
If you're the New York Times, do you want to call attention to her potential rival as being kind of like you and me, Ed?
I'm kind of wondering that myself. I mean, if there are strategies, this is one that's going to backfire, I think, on them rather prominently, mainly because it's the pettiness of it has everybody's eyebrows raised. Now, there was a couple of things that they did bring up in the article that were worth talking about, which was, the Republican Party of Florida had some issues with money management and credit card use down there. In fact, I believe one of them faced criminal charges over it. And Marco Rubio was caught up in that a little bit, but nothing major. But just he used the party credit card to do a couple of things, which he reimbursed. But generally speaking, it's just not really good practice to do that. Use your own credit cards to do that sort of stuff. So, I mean, there are certainly things that you can look at in terms of that. But most of this stuff goes back years and years and years. Here's part of this. Part of this story was that Rubio got in way over his head. He bought 3 houses, and he had $1 million in liabilities, the New York Times reported, right? And this is about 2005. And which is a decade ago, mind you, right? It's a decade ago, and he had $1 million in liabilities, but what they never told you was how much he had in assets and how much was coming in. And they got this financial advisor to say, well, this is it's a staggering amount of debt. It's a staggering amount of debt, and it's very dangerous, right? What the Times didn't disclose, and what the Washington Free Beacon found out, was that this guy that I think his name was Evensky, is a big-time Obama donor. Just so happens to be a big-time Obama donor. Plus, his Rubio's debt to income ratio never exceeded 43%, which was as much specificity as the campaign wanted to give them, but made it clear that it didn't exceed 43%. On top of which, in 2005, people were actually investing in real estate and buying houses in order to expand their wealth. I mean, yeah, he wasn't putting it in savings accounts, but there were a lot of people who were doing that and counting on the fact that the housing values were going to rise. Now, a lot of people got burned in that as well. Rubio apparently wasn't one of those people. I'm curious as to why any of that is particularly interesting. And so the whole thing comes across as petty and agenda driven. And when you tie that to, them sucking up to the Clintons to get that one time only donation to the New York Times Neediest Cause Fund, well, it just starts to smell a little bit, does it not, Andrew?
Yeah, it does. It does. And the reality is that if anyone went and looked at the New York Times finances, they could find funny bookkeeping too. There was a time during my tenure there when a national correspondent got more than a year behind in filing his expense account. And that's where you're talking thousands of dollars. You're supposed to do it every week. He was more than a year behind. He didn't have receipts. And finally, and you could argue that this was part of affirmative action, the Times hired an accountant to sit down with the guy in a hotel room and concoct his expenses for the year just to cover it. But of course, he didn't have the receipts, so they're just making it all up: this entertainment, that entertainment, this travel, and what have you. So, any human institution, whether it's the New York Times or the Catholic Church or some of the donors that these Republicans find themselves at cocktail parties with, or remember Hillary's friend. I think he's in prison now, the Oriental fellow.
Norman Chu, I think is.
Yeah.
Or Sue. Yeah.
So, they all and if you're at one of those events, it's very hard. I used to give my heart palpitations when somebody would just walk up to George W. Bush and want to take a picture. It didn't have cell phones in those days, but wanted to take a picture with him, and the candidates, would be obliging, which they do.
Right.
But this guy could be Ted Bundy in disguise, and then it makes it look like, hey, there he is, hanging out. They're real good friends.
Yeah.
They doesn't even know their name. That happens to all the politicians, but it seems relatively rare. So they do it. You can see them in crowds on the rope lines, people taking pictures with cell phones, and the candidate leaning in on their shoulder. It's just it's a great PR gimmick,
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Andrew, we're almost out of time, but we got to get
almost
the
out of
jokes of
time.
the
We
week.
got to have some jokes here. Can't go through another week without some smiles. I sent you a couple jokes last week,
And they
even
went
though I
over
wasn't
great.
here.
They went over great, by the way. Thank you very much for that.
Good. Okay. So Conan says the TSA is under a lot of fire for some major security lapses. It seems that airport agents have let through the security searches pipe bombs, knives, and the last 3 Nicolas Cage movies. The Donald Trump is going to make his announcement on whether or not he's running for president next week. And Jimmy Fallon said, and at this point, Donald Trump announcing he's running for president is like soccer's World Cup. It happens every 4 years, and who cares?
Goal!
Fallon also said, I'm happy to announce everyone in tonight's audience is going home with a bribe from FIFA. And finally, Conan O'Brien said that basketball commentator Charles Barkley said that he would like to shoot unruly sports fans who act like jerks. And Barkley was immediately reprimanded by the NBA, but he was recruited by the NFL.
There you go. Well, when one door closes, another one opens, Andrew.
That's right.
It's lovely how that works. One door closes, another one opens. Good for the round mound of rebound right there. So, all right. Andrew Malcolm, of course, you can find him at investors.com/Andrew Malcolm. That's right, correct. And at AH Malcolm on Twitter, where he is the prince of Twitter. And by the way, does all of these jokes all the time on Twitter. So be sure to check that out. Andrew, next week is going to be a little different. Hopefully, we're going to be able to get you on Thursday next week rather than Tuesday.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm
let me know.
next week.
With you?
Yeah.
With you on Thursday.
With me on Thursday, if that would work.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Excellent. So we'll have you on Thursday of next week. So
right.
Make sure to tune that in, and maybe we'll be on YouTube. Maybe not. Who knows? I don't know. I probably won't know before the show goes on the air. So there you go. Andrew Malcolm, investors.com. Thanks for being with us today, sir. We will talk to you later.
See you, everybody.
All right, folks. And now we're going to go ahead and reach out to Raffi Williams, who I'm going to go ahead and put the other card up here, because just for privacy's sake, people have called me out on this in the past. There we go. I believe this is who we need to call to make sure that we get this correct. And we are on the line. I think we've got Raffi on the line now. Raffi, welcome to the show. Great to have you back. I'm doing okay. How about yourself?
Not bad. Glad to be back on. It's been a while.
It has been a while. So, lots of things going on at the RNC, but we're going to start off by talking about Barack Obama's speech today about Obamacare. Is that it was almost one of those Scooby-Doo moments. If it wasn't for those darn kids, this program would be the most popular thing ever. And get off my damn lawn. This was
that might be the best description I've heard of this speech. I was talking about it with people earlier today, and that one takes the cake by far.
I've been working on it all afternoon, Raffi. You have to prepare for these things. But if it wasn't for those damn kids, this would be the most popular thing ever. I'm tired of hearing people talk badly about my program that only 39% of the country likes.
I mean, it is remarkable how they had not figured out a new way to try to sell this law, even as the unpopularity has skyrocketed here. We're at all-time high in terms of its unpopularity and all-time low in terms of people who support the law, and they still haven't changed their rhetoric or anything about the law. It still is hurting Americans, and as he's giving this speech, you have to remember, they're announcing premium increases across the country. In Minnesota, it's going up by an average of 43%. So people are going to feel this in their pocketbooks, and he's trying to say everything's great and gravy, when in fact you look at it and you look beneath the hood a little bit here, and things are falling apart as it goes along. So he's in real trouble, and he knows it. This law is unpopular. It's his signature accomplishment, and for being the signature accomplishment, it's blowing up in his face. This is not going to be the legacy he wants.
No, and it's interesting that you bring up Minnesota, because the reason why it's going up so badly, or so high in Minnesota, is worth noting. It's because this is going to be the third program year for Obamacare here, and we have our own state exchange. So whatever the Supreme Court decision is going to be down the road won't impact Minnesotans, because we built our own state exchange here, which, by the way, was just as screwed up as the national exchange. But at any rate, what happened was they had the first year program, and the insurer that offered the cheapest premiums got a bunch of business, as you would expect. And then they went out of business, or at least they decided that they couldn't maintain business at that level, and they dropped out of the exchange. So they no longer offer insurance in Minnesota. So then the second year, which was this year, another insurer had the lowest prices, and a bunch of people moved to that insurer. And sure as hell, in the next year, they are not going to be offering any plans either. So now it's going to go to the third insurer to be the lowest insurer in the state, which is one of the reasons why it's increased so much, is because you had these two insurance companies that were offering these basement prices, certainly with the encouragement of the Dayton administration out here, because they wanted to say, oh, look, this is inexpensive. It's, all these stories are just, scare tactics. No, no. And now you've got 43% average hike in insurance premiums this year, in large part because insurers didn't know how to price these things. They didn't know what the utilization was going to be. They didn't know what the demand was going to be, and they didn't know what providers were going to be left in the networks that they were able to set up. Now they know, and all of this is hitting this year, and I would guess that you're going to see shocks like this every year for the next few years.
Oh, I think completely. And I think because you hit the nail on the head there, when you're talking about insurance companies didn't know what the rates were going to be, what the usage was going to be, and now they're getting more and more data on this, they have to increase the prices because they realize this isn't the free market that pushes prices down. This is an actually exacerbated cost for a lot of people and a lot of companies here. And I think you're seeing this across the country. Now, if you go to GOP.com, a little selfless plug here, we have each and every state broken down with the average increases and what the high-level increase is for each state there on the Obamacare exchanges. So if you want to find out more about your particular state, you can do that. I just happen to pull the Minnesota number because I know, well, Ed, you're from Minnesota. So.
Right, of course. Yeah, no, this is great. I'm glad you did. Besides which, it's just a really good demonstration of how screwed up this exchange program is. And, the thing about this is that Minnesota actually had something that wasn't quite the same as the Obamacare exchange, but it was actually fairly easy to find insurance in this state. There was some, it costs money, but there was a point in time where I was going to have to shop for my own insurance in the transition from one employer to another employer, and this is during the time that I was blogging, and there was potential that I was going to have to do my insurance on my own. I was able to find insurance plans. I mean, I didn't like the prices of them, but I was able to find them, and the prices were, in retrospect, about average of what everybody else was paying around the country, in the range anyway. But it wasn't difficult to find these things. Insurance companies were actually looking for people to sign up for their plans, so they were out there. I had a couple of issues with pre-existing conditions, but there was a program here in the state to deal with that where I could sign up for a rider with the state to cover it for the first year, and then I'd be grandfathered in on a regular plan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It wasn't difficult to do. Well, they've screwed that system up, and now everything's more expensive. You get less care, higher deductibles. I mean, the deductibles on this, Raffi, are insane. Basically, some of these plans you're paying, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 out of pocket before the insurance covers anything at all, which we used to call catastrophic insurance back in the day when the premiums were a whole lot lower for that than they are right now.
Well, I mean, I think this is why you're seeing a lot of people, Obama touted how this was going to supposedly decrease visits to the emergency room and get people more regular care. But in fact, we've seen more people going to the emergency room because they can't afford to get regular care with Obamacare. Right. It really has gutted our healthcare system in the worst way possible. And it's one of these programs that as we watch this go and as we hear stories like yours of people who say it's actually harder now, or I was happier when I had my catastrophic plan that was protecting me, but now I have to pay more to get less coverage.
Right.
It really is a sad turn of affairs.
It is. It's a very bad system. It's poorly designed. It was designed by people who didn't understand risk pools at all and thought that they were smart enough to redesign a market that they didn't understand. And this is what you get. I mean, this is exactly what you get with top-down government-based solutions. It's unfortunately something that's going to take a long time to fix now that we've put it in place, but it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse from this point forward. So,
and remember, they've pushed off things like the employer mandate so that you don't feel the pain of certain provisions yet. It's worse is still coming. That's the scariest part about this. We think we're feeling pain now. People in their pocketbooks are seeing it, but they haven't seen the worst yet. And I think that's the scariest thing to me, at least. And we have a lot more to see here. And, at the end of the day, what they have done is taken the worst parts of big government, put it into the healthcare system in our country that was already, it wasn't the best. We needed to do reform to it and fix it, but they did it in the worst way possible. Instead of looking at ways to increase free market participation and ways to push costs down on an individual basis, they try to think, government knows best. And what we see time and time again, that's just not the case.
It is not the case. So over at the RNC, you guys are working on ways in which you can build on your success from the 2014 midterm elections into a presidential cycle. And, I've looked at these types of things. I looked at some of the stuff that came out of the autopsy, the growth opportunity report. We call it an autopsy. You guys had a nicer name for it.
Yes.
We didn't want to quite say that there's a cadaver sitting around here, but so you guys called it a growth opportunity, which is nice. And that works, but it was a good report, fine report. What are you guys doing now? What's the latest from the RNC? What should people know about?
Well, I think you have to understand what the role of the RNC here is in this cycle, especially during a primary. It is to attack Hillary Clinton and whoever the Democrats are putting up there, and to make sure people understand the truth about them.
Right.
While Republicans are going out talking about where they stand on the issues, why people should vote for them, expressing their positions, we have to make sure that people are aiming the fire at Hillary Clinton. So we take that upon ourselves, and so we think we are, chief opposition to Hillary Clinton. And so we have made sure that anytime she launches her campaign or does whatever, there are videos, there's research that's going to bloggers and reporters. We're making sure that the information gets out there into the bloodstream. Just last week, in fact, we placed a hit in Michigan that says the battery maker A123, right? They're the ones that got that stimulus funds. They're working with the card company Fisker that went bankrupt. Well, they went bankrupt, and then they got bought by a group called Wangjing or something, some Chinese firm. But while Hillary Clinton was on the trail in New Hampshire, she was complaining about this, that, we're selling all of our technology space to the Chinese. Yet, in fact, while she was Secretary of State, she was in a position to kill the sale of A123 to the Chinese firm and did nothing, despite the fact that a bipartisan, every congressman and senator from Michigan said, you should not do this deal. So we dug up the research on it. We got it to the Detroit Free Press. It's a story that kind of illustrates how Hillary Clinton talks out of two sides of her mouth. It says one thing, does another. It's that liberal limousine hypocrisy coming to the forefront again. So we're going to keep her feet to the fire this whole time by making sure people understand the truth about where she stands on the issues. Keep on talking about the email. Keep on talking about the foreign donation scandals. Keep on talking about her tenure as Secretary of State. I mean, just this week, the Russians said that the Russian reset was her idea.
Right.
So, and this latest relaunch of her campaign she has coming this week is probably going to be as successful as the Russian relaunch, if I had to guess.
Well, she knows reset buttons, man. Don't underestimate her. She knows reset buttons. Wait a minute. That was an overcharge button. It was an overcharge button. It wasn't a reset button. It was an overcharge button. Well, maybe she doesn't know reset buttons. But so, there's times when I sit there at my desk, Raffi, because we're trying our best to make sure that people remember, what the Clintons have been doing over the last 15 years. But certainly trying to make sure that people remain focused on the information that's coming out now about their these really sleazy connections to foreign governments, foreign interests, corporate interests here in the United States who are driving, arguably driving policy by dumping money into the Clinton Foundation or paying Bill Clinton for speaker fees. These are the types of things that people should be asking Hillary for answers on. And there are times, Raffi, when I sit at my desk and think, can I actually write another Hillary Clinton post without hitting the gag reflex? Because honestly, it's almost surreal that she is still a front runner in either party's nomination process. I mean, if she was a Republican with these types of things going on, the press would be camped out in front of her door, shouting questions through the front window, through the mail slot. They'd be lifting the mail slot and yelling questions in there and sticking a microphone in there to hear whatever possible answer might be coming out there. And yet the media here just doesn't seem to want to pin her down and ask her these questions.
Well, I think they're playing by the assumption that she's going to be the nominee, so they're trying to play polite with her so they get future access. But instead, it just causes a headache, and I think that it has not allowed the American people to get the answers that they need, the voters deserve. I mean, I think if you look, the best juxtaposition I can think of right now is the Rubio stuff, right? The New York Times is trying to do this oppo against Rubio where he's got a boat or, he got speeding tickets, kind of small ball stuff here. And you juxtapose that to the research they did on Clinton, which is, a lot of the stuff coming out of that Schweitzer book that really has legs to it. It's stuff that American people care about. It's stuff that's driven down her unpopularity numbers. And this is stuff that would kill most candidates, but for some reason she just doesn't answer questions and gets by on it, whereas Rubio is now getting hit for having a traffic ticket. It really is bizarre and beyond me that she is allowed to skate by. This has been it seems, a trend with the Clintons for 30 years now.
Yeah, well, did you but he has a luxury speedboat, Raffi. I mean, did you see the picture of this luxury speedboat that
Yeah, the fishing boat. I saw the pictures of it.
I was, I saw this thing in the New York Times this morning, and I'm thinking like something out of Miami Vice, with who was it? It was Don Johnson and I can't think of the other, I can't think of
I wish I could help you, Ed, but you're dating yourself just a little bit.
Okay, so, I kind of dug the pastels and the unshaven look back in the day. All right, so it's 30 years ago, but still. Crockett and Tubbs. I'll just say Crockett and Tubbs. Those were the two characters. I mean, they had the really nice, fancy, cherry red speedboats. Yeah, the cigarette boats. This is a fishing boat. It's a 24-foot fishing boat. I mean, it's got two outboard motors. That's the most, luxurious thing that you can say about these. It's nice, it's $80,000. It's nice.
Yeah.
But luxury speedboat, man. I got a note from somebody on Rubio's team. I won't say who, but the description of the house in the New York Times was this. Then by the end of 2005, the Rubios completed the purchase of a new home, twice the size of their previous one, for $550,000. The house, among the more expensive in West Miami, really, stood out from the aging homes nearby. It included an in-ground pool, which means basically an outdoor pool. It wasn't a, what were those above ground pools, the metal ones that you would put up in your yard?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? So it wasn't that. It was actually in the ground, which is where most pools are, an in-ground pool.
That's what I assume.
A handsome brick driveway, meticulously manicured shrubs, and oversized windows. Now, 3 years ago, when Politico was writing about this is how Politico described the exact same house. There's nothing opulent about their home, but it is warm and bright and simply decorated with white and brown furniture. Same house. That's
too much. And they don't mention that Hillary Clinton's Chappaqua mansion or her Georgetown mansion. I mean, look at the little comparison here. Hillary Clinton comes out saying we're dead broke, owns 2 mansions. Rubio gets knocked for owning a $500,000 house that has a pool.
In Miami, where $500,000, at the time in 2005, let's face it. I mean, in Miami, those real estate prices were kind of going out of sight.
Right.
Yeah.
You had all that South American investment going into Miami back then, too, but this is before the crash, obviously.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, it was an area where there was a lot of speculation. It was a big area for the crash was in South Florida, and especially in Miami. Yeah. So I imagine he might still be dealing with the aftermath of that on that particular house, but I mean, this is not lifestyles of the rich and famous, Raffi. This is just the guy who's living in an ungated community down the road.
It really is. It's foolish to think that there's all this out there on Clinton, and they might write one story, but there's no follow up to it. There's no digging at it or pushing buttons or trying to get answers. And then you have this story on Rubio, and I'm left scratching my head as a consumer of news, going, how are these even in the same paper? How are they comparable? The Rubio might warrant, a small post here or there, but definitely not the kind of coverage it's gotten in the New York Times.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to let you go because I know you got a meeting to run off to, Raffi, but people can find out more about what's going on at www.gop.com. And what's your what are your Twitter handles that people can follow on Twitter for?
Well, at Reince, REINCE. Is the best one, and then I'm at Raffi Williams, RAFFI Williams, and we're always pumping out information there. We always have videos whenever Clinton does something foolish or does another reset. We'll be there bracketing her, so make sure you're following our videos and pushing them and pumping them as much as possible. And remember to check out those state graphics, the Obamacare graphics. They're really great to see how the premiums are affecting people in your area, and they're easily shareable graphics, and so I suggest everybody go to GOP.com and find out more.
There you go. Raffi Williams from the RNC. Thanks for being with us today, sir.
Thanks, Ed.
Talk to you soon.
Of course.
Raffi Williams has been my guest, and I'm getting a call from the phone ringing is somebody else's show mercilessly intruding on the Ed Morrissey show, but if you don't know what that reference is, basically. Let me explain it to you. Dwayne Generalissimo Patterson will be on our show on Thursday afternoon. I'm not sure why he's calling today, but he will be on the show on Thursday. We're going to wrap things up for today, though. I want to thank everybody for being with us and for being patient with the YouTube thing. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen with the Ustream thing now. I may just stick with YouTube and try to gut it out, or work something else out with Ustream. But Raffi should be the host for fundraising raffles. Well, Raffi's just a great guy, and we don't get him on here enough. So I'm gonna pick his brain a little bit more often down the road. But for right now, it was great to have him on. I want to thank Andrew Malcolm, of course. Now, I did say we'll be back the normal time on Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Central, 1 on the left coast. We'll probably do it through YouTube unless I say differently, only because I'm not sure I'm going to get a chance to unravel whatever is going on with Ustream at this point in time. If I can, I can. I would like to be in the Ustream network because we can attract more viewers that way. But frankly, if we can't figure out how to do this without buying the buying the software all over again, full price, I don't know if I really want to deal with that right at the moment. So we'll figure that out. We'll work on that. But next week I will be traveling on Tuesday, so there won't be a show next Tuesday. There will be a show the Thursday after that, and we'll have Dwayne and Andrew on. And I think when I'm traveling and I have to miss a show, I'm just going to try to get the two of them on the same show. And that way we get a chance to catch up with our two favorite folks every single time I'm on the road. Anyway, what about tin cans and strings? Well, technically that might be an improvement over some of the things that you see here on the Ed Morrissey Show. But that's a topic for another day. All right, I want to thank the folks in the chat room. It's great to see Rubio Boatster, by the way, back in the chat room. Monster from e3gazette.blogspot.com. He's on Twitter at @SumErgoMonstro, although I haven't seen him do much tweeting. So hopefully we can convince him to do a little bit more tweeting along the line. But of course, Cranky T-Rex at Cranky T-Rex on Twitter. CrankyTrex.blogspot.com for the blogging. He also writes for buzzpo.com and occasionally for hotair.com. And it's great to see his stuff at hotair.com. He's doing some great stuff for us. I hope everybody's had a chance to read it. And want to say thanks to Sargex, who's contributed a few cartoons for us for CT Rex's posts. So, yeah, definitely be following both of those guys. Both great friends of the show, and great to see them in the chat room. CT whenever, every show, and Monster whenever he can make it. So it's good to see him in there. Who else has been in the chat room? Let's play a little walking music here on the Ed Morrissey Show to figure that point out. Who else has been in here? Let's see. Rob Knox. Cheap Boat, that's Yidwith. It's Jeff Dunitz from JeffDunitz.com at YidwithLid on the Twitters. Good to see Jeff in the chat room. He's got other things going on too. I think he's still working for MRC TV, mrctv.org, I believe it is. But Jeff put the URL up in the chat room so that people can follow it back. Yeah, there we go. mrctv.org, JeffDunitz.com, all that kind of fun stuff. Conservative and Liberal Hands, Fausta from FaustusBlog.com, a great Western Hemisphere blog. I read her every single day. So should you. Juanito Cabron, Mr. Fastbucks, one of the fabulous tribbles. Prairie Dog SD. TR4A, my cousin Mike here with us. Via Passos around the ancestral Morrissey Manse. And the first mate behind me, keeping me on the straight and narrow, and apparently the secretary of today's show, because the phone has not stopped ringing all this time. Just ending now on YouTube. Yes, just ending now on YouTube. It's buffering for you because it is showing that the stream coming from me is still good, so I'm not sure what the issue might be. All right, folks, I want to again thank everyone for being with us. Don't forget, we'll be back on Thursday with Dwayne Journalismo Patterson and more guests, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Central, 1 on the left coast. Until then, have a great afternoon, folks, and don't miss a minute of the Ed Morrissey Show.